There was a young woman named Thessaly. She was 29 years old, and she lived in a small town called Meron, tucked between two hills where the wind always smelled like pine trees and rain. Thessaly had a kind face, the sort of face that strangers felt safe talking to. She had warm brown eyes and hands that were always busy, cooking, sewing, helping, building. She was the kind of person who gave without being asked, who prayed without being told, and who loved her God with a quiet and steady fire that never flickered, even on the hardest days. But Thessaly had a wound she carried quietly. She had been praying for the same thing for 7 years. It started when she was 22. She had just finished her studies and come back home to Meron, full of hope and plans. She had a dream, a simple dream, but one that burned in her chest like a warm coal. She wanted to open a small home for children who had no family, not a big institution with cold hallways and plastic chairs, a real home, with a kitchen that smelled like bread, and a garden where children could dig in the dirt, and walls painted with color, and a table big enough for everyone. She had written the vision down in her journal. She had prayed over it every morning. She had even picked a name for it, Bethel House, meaning the house of God. She was so sure, so absolutely certain that this was what God had placed in her heart. And then nothing happened. Year 1 passed. She applied for land, and the application was rejected. She asked the church for support, and the elders said they would think about it. They kept thinking. Year 2 passed. She saved money slowly, carefully, and then her mother fell ill. And every coin she had saved went toward medicine and doctors and the long, tender work of caring for someone you love. Year 3, year 4, she watched other people around her build houses, start businesses, get married, have children. She cheered for them from the side with a smile on her face and a question in her heart. God, what about me? What about what you placed inside me? She never said it with bitterness. She said it the way a child says it to a father, honestly, openly, with tears that were not angry but confused. She trusted her God, she did, but she was tired. In the 5th year, something strange happened. A man named Ezron came to their church. He was an older man, maybe 60, with silver hair and a slow, deliberate way of walking, as if every step was something he had decided to take on purpose. He was visiting from another town and had come to speak at the Sunday service. Thessaly sat in the 3rd row, as she always did, with her worn Bible on her lap and her journal beside it. Ezron stood at the front and opened his mouth. And the first thing he said was this: God is not slow. He is a builder, and a builder does not hand you the keys to the house before the foundation is finished. Thessaly felt something move inside her, not a loud feeling, a quiet one, like the shift of something that had been stuck for a long time. Ezron spoke for 40 minutes. He talked about a man in the Bible named Joseph, a man whose dream came from God himself, and yet who spent years in a pit, in slavery, in prison, before the dream was fulfilled. He talked about how every hard season Joseph walked through was not a punishment. It was preparation. The prison was not the end of the story. The prison was part of the story. God uses the waiting, Ezron said. He uses the years you think are wasted. He is building something in you that cannot be built any other way. After the service, Thessaly walked up to Ezron. She did not plan to. Her feet simply moved toward him. She said, I have been waiting for something for 5 years. Ezron looked at her, not with pity, with understanding. He said, tell me. She told him about Bethel House, about the children with no home, about the applications and the rejections, and her mother's illness, and the money that never came, about the ache of watching the years go by and feeling like the dream was getting smaller and further away. When she finished, Ezron was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Thessaly, let me ask you something. When your mother was sick, who took care of her? She blinked. I did. Were you good at it? She thought about it honestly. Yes, I learned to be patient. I learned to stay calm when things were frightening. I learned to manage small resources carefully because we did not have much. I learned to love someone even when they couldn't give anything back. Ezron smiled. He said nothing more. He simply smiled. And Thessaly stood there and felt, for the first time in 5 years, that maybe the waiting had not been wasted. Maybe she had been in school. Maybe God had been teaching her, not delaying her. She walked home that evening and cried. Not sad tears, something deeper. Relief maybe, the kind of crying that happens when something tight inside you finally loosens. Year 6 was the hardest year of all. Her friend Priska, a lively, generous woman who had been her companion since childhood, told her one afternoon over tea that she should give up the dream. Thessaly, Prisca said, kindly, gently, but firmly. Sometimes the things we want are not the things God wants for us. Maybe Bethel House was just a nice idea. Maybe it was never really from God. Sometimes we have to let go. It was said with love. Thessaly knew that. Prisca was not being cruel. She was being practical. The way people become. Practical when they have watched someone they love struggle for too long. But the words landed like a stone in still water. That night, Thessaly did not pray in words. She lay on her bed and stared at the ceiling in the dark. And she simply put her hand on her chest, over her heart, and said, God, is this from you? Or have I been chasing something that isn't real? She stayed quiet. She waited. And slowly, softly, like a candle being lit in a dark room, she felt it again. The same warm coal. Still there, still burning. 6 years later, and it had not gone out. She sat up. She opened her journal to the first page, where she had written the vision down years ago. The ink was old now, slightly faded, but the words were clear. A home for children who have no one. A table big enough for everyone. Bethel House. She pressed her hand on the page. She said, Then I'm not letting go. If you put it there, you will bring it to pass. I don't know when. I don't know how, but I'm not letting go. That night, something settled in her. Something deep and unshakable. Not the excitement she had felt at 22. This was quieter than excitement, stronger, like an anchor had dropped in her soul and found the bottom. This is what the Bible calls hope, not wishful thinking, not daydreaming, but confident trust resting on a promise, even when you cannot see the evidence. We are saved by hope, but hope that is seen is not hope. For why does a man still hope for what he already sees? But if we hope for what we do not yet see, we wait for it with patience. Romans 8:24-25. Thessaly had arrived at that place, the place of patient, anchored hope. In the 7th year, a woman came to Meron. Her name was Abital. She was a quiet woman, probably 50 years old, with careful eyes and a way of listening that made you feel. She was truly hearing you. She had moved to Meron after losing her husband to be closer to her sister. She started attending the same church as Thessaly, and one Sunday, they sat next to each other by accident. Or rather, by the gentle design of a God who is never accidental. They began talking, slowly at first, the way two people do when they are both a little guarded, then more openly. Abital had been a social worker for 20 years. She had spent her whole life working with children who were alone in the world. She knew the system. She knew the paperwork, the rules, the right people to speak to, the way to build something that would last. And she had money. Not a great fortune, but a modest inheritance from her husband. Money she had been praying about, asking God to show her where it should go. One afternoon, Thessaly and Abital were walking along the edge of town, near the 2 hills, and Thessaly told her about Bethel House. She was not asking for anything. She was just sharing the way you share something precious with someone you trust. Abital stopped walking. She turned to Thessaly. There were tears in her eyes. She said, I have been looking for this. I have been asking God to show me where this money belongs. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I knew I would recognize it when I saw it. She paused. Then she said, Thessaly, this is it. The tears that came to Thessaly's eyes in that moment were not the quiet tears of exhaustion she had cried for years. They were the tears of someone who has waited so long that when the answer finally comes, their body doesn't quite know what to do with it. Joy and relief and wonder all at once, pouring out through the eyes. 7 years. 7 years of no and not yet and wait and silence. 7 years of growing and breaking and learning and holding on. And now, standing beside 2 hills in the wind that smelled like pine trees and rain, the answer was here. But let me tell you something important. When Bethel House finally opened, and it did open 14 months later, in a beautiful stone building, on the edge of Meron with a big kitchen and a garden and walls painted bright yellow and blue. When it opened, Thessaly understood something she could not have understood at 22. She understood why it had taken 7 years, because at 22, she had the dream but not the depth. She did not yet know how to stay calm when a child had a crisis at midnight. She had not yet learned to manage small resources with wisdom and care. She had not yet learned the patience that comes from sitting beside a suffering person, hour after hour, with nothing to offer but your presence. She had not yet learned to lead with gentleness instead of ambition. She had not yet learned that a house of God must be built on prayer, not plans. The 7 years had not stolen anything from her. The 7 years had built her. The children who came to Bethel House did not just get a home. They got a woman who had been prepared for them, a woman whose hands knew how to hold the broken, a woman whose spirit knew how to be steady when the world was not, a woman who had looked at God's silence and decided, over and over again, to trust Him anyway. That kind of woman cannot be made quickly. That kind of woman is made in the waiting. There was a boy who came to Bethel House in the 2nd month. His name was Caspian. He was 9 years old. He had dark eyes that looked older than 9, the eyes of a child who has seen things he should not have seen. He didn't speak much. He ate carefully, as if he was not sure the food would stay. He sat at the edge of rooms, watching. The other helpers at Bethel House were kind, but they didn't quite know what to do with Caspian. He wouldn't respond to cheerfulness. He wouldn't respond to activities and games. He would simply sit and watch and wait. One evening, Thessaly sat down beside him in the garden. She didn't say anything. She just sat beside him and looked at the same thing he was looking at. The hills turning gold in the evening light. After a long time, Caspian said very quietly, "Do you think God forgot about me?" Thessaly felt the question all the way through her. She looked at him. She thought about 7 years of waiting. She thought about rejected applications and empty bank accounts and her mother's long illness and Priska's gentle, well-meaning advice to give up. She thought about that night on her bed in the dark, with her hand over her heart, asking if any of it was real. She said, "I used to wonder the same thing." Caspian looked at her. She said, "But I found out that God doesn't forget. He is just very, very careful. He doesn't move until everything is ready. And when he finally moves, it is so much better than what you imagined." She looked at the yellow walls of the house behind them, at the garden where someone had planted tomatoes and beans, at the windows with light coming through them. "This house," she said, "was supposed to exist 7 years ago. I thought so anyway. I pushed and prayed and waited. And it didn't come. But Caspian, if it had come 7 years ago, it would not have been the same. I would not have been the same. And maybe you would have been somewhere else." The boy was quiet for a while. Then he said, "So God waited so that this house would be ready for me?" Thessaly's heart broke open in the most beautiful way. She said, Maybe he was building it for you all along." Caspian didn't respond, but he moved very slightly from the edge of the bench to the middle of it, closer to her, and that small movement, that small, quiet shift of a child deciding to trust, was worth every single year of waiting. There is a passage in the book of Habakkuk, a small and often overlooked book, where the prophet is frustrated. He has been crying out to God. He has seen injustice. He has seen suffering. He has prayed and nothing seems to change. And God says to him, "Write the vision. Make it plain on tablets, that he may run who reads it. For still the vision awaits its appointed time. It hastens to the end, it will not lie. If it seems slow, wait for it. It will surely come. It will not delay." Habakkuk 2:3. Write the vision. Wait for it. It will surely come. Not maybe. Not perhaps. Surely. God does not make promises He does not keep. He does not plant a vision in your heart and then walk away. He is not careless with the things He creates. When He places a dream inside you, a true dream, a God-given dream, He is already working on the other side of it, preparing the pieces, growing the people, building the foundation. You cannot see it, but it is happening. The waiting is not abandonment. The silence is not rejection. The not yet is not never. It is simply this: the building is not finished. And God will not give you the keys to the house before the foundation is ready to hold it. Perhaps you are reading this and you are in the middle of your own waiting. Maybe you have been praying for the same thing for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. Maybe you started with fire and excitement and certainty, and now you are tired. Maybe someone kind, someone who loves you, has told you to let it go. Maybe you have asked God in the dark whether any of it is real. Hear this: you are not forgotten. You are not overlooked. The dream in your heart did not arrive by accident. God does not give people visions just to disappoint them. He gives visions to the people He is preparing to carry them. And the preparation takes time. Joseph waited 13 years from the dream to the palace. Abraham waited 25 years for the son he was promised. Moses waited 40 years in the desert before God spoke from the burning bush. Hannah wept year after year before Samuel was born. And Jesus Himself, the Son of God, waited 30 years in a carpenter's shop before his ministry began. God is not in a hurry. He is building something eternal, and eternal things are not built in a week. The waiting is not wasted. Every hard season is a classroom. Every closed door is a redirection. Every year that feels empty is a year in which God is filling you with something you cannot yet see: patience, wisdom, compassion, depth, faith that has been tested and has held. These things cannot be downloaded. They cannot be rushed. They are grown in the waiting, the way a tree grows slowly, ring by ring, year by year, until its roots are deep enough to hold it in a storm. And when your moment comes, when God finally opens the door, when the pieces fall into place, when you stand in the middle of the thing you have prayed for, you will understand. You will look back at the years and see not waste, but preparation, not silence, but the quiet work of a God who was always present, always building, always moving, just not always in ways your eyes could see. The last thing I will tell you is this. 3 years after Bethel House opened, Thessaly was walking through the garden one morning. The tomatoes were red. The beans were climbing their sticks. The children were at breakfast, and she could hear them through the open window, laughing, arguing over something small, the ordinary beautiful noise of children who feel safe. Caspian was at the table. He was 12 now. He had grown tall and his eyes had changed. They still held depth, but the darkness had softened. He was teaching a younger child how to fold a paper bird, showing her the careful creases with patient hands. Thessaly stood in the garden and looked at the window and was completely still. She thought about 22-year-old Thessaly, who had written the vision in her journal with shaking, hopeful hands. That young woman could not have imagined this. Not the fullness of it. Not Abital, who arrived exactly when she was needed. Not Caspian, who asked the right question on the right evening. Not the garden with tomatoes. Not the sound of laughing children on a Tuesday morning. God had not just answered her prayer. He had exceeded it. He had built something richer, deeper, fuller than anything she had drawn in her imagination at 22. He always does. When he finally moves, he does not just fulfill the dream. He fills it beyond what you imagined. Pressed down, shaken together, running over, just as he promised. Now to him who is able to do far more abundantly than all that we ask or think, according to the power at work within us. To him be glory. Ephesians 3:20-21. So if today you are holding a vision, if today you are tired of waiting, if today the years feel long and the silence feels heavy and you are standing in the middle of your own, not yet, hold on. Write the vision. Keep praying. Keep showing up. Keep trusting. Let the waiting do its work in you. Let God build the foundation while you cannot see it. Let His timing be better than yours, because it always is. He has not forgotten you. He has not abandoned the dream He placed inside you. He is simply, carefully, lovingly, perfectly building. And when it is finished, when He is done, when the door finally opens, you will not wish He had moved sooner. You will kneel down and thank Him for every single year of the wait. Wait on the Lord. Be strong and let your heart take courage. Wait on the Lord. Psalm 27:14.